start exploring the things I needed to explore to be able to fulfill the agreement that I had made with him. So spurred on by the sighting, I began doing some investigation into metaphysical ideas and UFO phenomenology, found that they were, in the literature that existed at the time, a little bit intertwined, and eventually came across the whole concept of channeling along with many other concepts. Eventually somebody introduced me to several channels who were practicing at the time, and one of the entities coming through one of those channels offered to teach several people how to channel if they were interested. I took them up on the offer, even then not thinking this is something I was going to wind up doing for myself. There just weren't very many books on the subject out at the time, and I wanted to learn more about it. So I figured if I go into this class, I'll see something contemporary in action, I'll learn something new. When I was in the class, under the guidance of the other entity, through the other channel, and in a receptive state, is when Bashar and his people made the telepathic link with me. And as soon as they did, the memory of having made the agreement prior to physical life came back. What also came with it was the memory of who they were, who I was to them, why the ship sighting had occurred. Dream conversations I had blocked from my memory up to that point also came flooding back into that one moment. And what came with it was the first, let's say, real-time message from them telepathically, which basically went like, now that you remember you made the agreement, do you still want to fulfill it? Because it was a choice, and it always is. Obviously, I said yes, and I've been doing this now for just a little over the past 4 years. Now, Bashar presents himself as a member of an extraterrestrial community, and to some degree, this is not uncommon, but it's still a little bit rare in terms of the broad spectrum of channelings that are being done, in the sense that most channelings that I'm familiar with are dealing with either other aspects of your own consciousness, or what you might call guides, or other disembodied forms of consciousness, either people who have been alive and are no longer alive, or entities that have not existed in physical terms in our plane at all. The one exception, it seems, to this, more often than not, is the extraterrestrial connection, which can also be disembodied, but in this case and a few other cases is not. Bashar has a physical embodiment, and what you're actually experiencing here is literally a telepathic link-up, much in the same manner as any one of us would actually use a telephone. I'm being used as a translation device, because basically, from their point of view, biological life forms are actually the most sensitive transmitters and receivers there are, so they can be used in that way across, you know, whatever distance is represented by wherever they are. Now, he does present himself this way, but the one thing that I especially like to underline, particularly for people that are new to this particular channeling, is that there is absolutely nothing about this channeling or this interaction that insists that you have to believe that it is what we say it is. There's absolutely no way we can prove this to you now anyway. Within about 10 or 20 years, Bashar has said perhaps some of his people and some other civilizations may be able to meet us face to face, depending upon the types of changes that take place in our society that would make that conducive. Right now, they're remaining in the background on purpose because they don't want anyone to necessarily pay attention to who they are. They want people to listen to the information in and of itself. They have said that they've noticed we have had a tendency in this society to lock on to the messenger and not listen to the message. So they want to make sure that if anyone is paying attention to anything at all, it's less of them and more of the information itself. And that's one of the reasons they're coming through in this way. But you can ask him things about his own society. Feel free to do that. He's discussed that with many people many times. Bashar, the word itself, is not literally his name. In their society, in their evolution, they are pretty much telepathic now, and they don't have names as such. But he chose a word out of one of our own Earth languages that at least is some sort of a symbol by which we can refer to him, since he knows that it's convenient for us to use labels and names in that way. I had no idea what the word meant when he chose it. It's actually Arabic, which is partly my background, which is partly why he chose it. But I don't speak Arabic, and I was told by other people that it actually has several meanings. The first meaning of the word is commander, which is something similar to what he is in his society. The second meaning is simply the man or the being. And the third meaning is a broader interpretation of that, which is simply humanity in general. The fourth meaning, however, in Armenian is probably the most appropriate, because Bashar in Armenian means messenger, and that's basically what he's doing, is functioning as a messenger, a go-between between his society and our society. So by all means, use the word as his name, and he'll respond to it in the same way any of us would when called by name. The things that I would like to underline again before we begin is that to Bashar, there really is no such thing as a silly or a stupid question. Don't feel that you have to hold back because you might be wasting someone's time. To him, all interactions are valid. If it's something you really feel you want to talk about, then by all means bring it up. Out of the regular sessions that we do in Los Angeles, sometimes people would ask what, more often than not, might be considered a very mundane question, but the interaction that ensues is usually something that surprisingly serves everyone in a very unexpected way. So don't hold back on that account. The only other thing I would like to point out is that since he's not actually speaking our language, since what's happening is my subconscious is simply applying the words that are necessary to match the concepts he is sending, like a translation device, sometimes either the concepts or the words may come out in ways that you're not used to hearing them. If for any reason the thing he's discussing is not clear to you, then don't let it slide. By all means, stop and say, wait a second, Bashar, I don't get that. Could you use another word? Could you use an analogy or what have you? He wants to know that the conversation is going over as clearly as it possibly can. So don't hesitate to do that as well. When I go into the altered state, all I will ask is when I'm going in and coming out at the end, is that everyone sit still and be quiet. It just takes a moment for me to do that. When I'm coming out, I'm not tired and I'm not depleted, but I am extremely disoriented. For me, this is like literally falling into a very, very deep daydream. I don't hear the words of the interaction, but what I do is feel energy, I feel emotion, I see pictures, which are sometimes abstract and sometimes concrete. So it's like being caught up in a very emotional and energetic daydream, more like listening to music than anything else. So, like a daydream, if somebody were to walk in the room and mention your name and you just don't hear them because you're not paying attention, I don't hear the words because in the altered state, there is no analytical thought process that's going on. So when I come out, I'm very disoriented, and if he says goodbye and you all start talking all at once, it's like having 60 people screaming in your ear in your bedroom when you're trying to wake up in the morning, and it's just a little bit disorienting, a little bit shattering. So just give me a second, I'll let you know when I'm refocused, then you can run around and scream and fly out the door and anything you want to do from that point forward. Also, when I'm going into the altered state, you will probably notice a few bodily motions, and the only reason I mention this at all is because sometimes people say, gosh, it looks like you're going through a lot of pain to allow the adjustment to occur. It is not painful. I'm having a wonderful time. It's just an automatic adjustment to the energy. It's similar to the idea of your muscle twitching just because of an electrical, impulse. So there's nothing painful about it for me whatsoever, so please don't worry on that account. Bottom line to the whole thing is really to have a lot of fun. Bashar usually comes through as being very energetic. People that are familiar with him know he's not shy in the least, so please don't be shy on your end. But the lighter you are with him, the lighter he will be with you. He is always directly reflecting whatever he's getting from any particular individual or the overall energy of the group he's interacting with at any particular time. So interact with him informally and interact with him as a friend. On one level, one thing that I would like to remind everyone is that, again, you don't have to believe that this is what we say it is. There's, again, no way to prove it, but maybe if you stop and think about it and give it the benefit of the doubt that maybe if this is what it says it is, then realize that what's happening is you're getting an opportunity to talk to a member of another culture and that we all are actually acting as representatives right now. And so maybe frame or phrase your interaction with them in the light that what you say is actually representing our planet. And what would you say if you had a chance to talk to someone of this nature? So just keep that in mind, and I don't mean to say that to put you in awe of them, because they'll be the first ones to knock that concept right flat to the ground. They see us all as equals. So again, interact as friends. I don't think there's anything else I need to say. Are there any questions about procedures?
Yeah. Before we ask a question, do we need to say our name and where we live?
No, not at all. Unless it's something that you really specifically want to talk about, or he instructs you to do so because of the nature of your question.
Are there any more seats over there? One.
Are there any other questions before we start? Okay. Is everything going?
Yeah.
Okay.
have just one more thing. If anyone here has not paid, either Ken or myself for this event, could you see me afterwards? Just see me afterwards.
Or I don't say, how are you all this day of your time as you create time to exist? Allow us to begin this interaction, this day of your time, with the laying down of a few foundational concepts that will allow perhaps more ease of communication within this interaction that your civilization and our civilizations have co-created today. First of all, allow us to remind each and every one of you that even though you may be perceiving what you would call a singular identity, a singular entity in this interaction, we are in that sense representative of hundreds, thousands, millions in your terms of counting of consciousnesses that are representative of what you call the association of worlds. And they have in their own manner, telepathically, as you say, plugged in to my consciousness for each and any of the interactions we have with you. So understand that while there may be a gathering of individuals on your side, there is a gathering of individuals on our side as well. The idea will be as follows, that we are in many ways extremely excited and interested to be interacting with members of any civilization, including your civilization, for we can learn much in the way of your civilization's offerings to us by seeing through each and every one of you, individually and collectively, how you have interpreted your particular facet of the multidimensional crystal of infinite creation. We always interact with every civilization knowing beyond a shadow of a doubt that they are in every way, shape, and form equal to any civilization we are aware of, no matter whether or not you may have labels or terminologies for other civilizations that you may call more advanced than your own civilization. These things are not only just a matter of labeling, they are only a matter of perspective in that way. There may be an opportunity to realize that your civilization is changing, is expanding, perhaps even similarly to the ways our civilization has expanded, but in no way, shape, or form are our methodologies being presented to you to allow you to think that our methodologies are better than the ways you might choose. We are simply here interacting with your civilization at this time because we have recognized that your civilization is exploring things and ideas and levels of consciousness that we have explored, that have worked for us. And as you create that exploration in your consciousness, you radiate a particular frequency that we have in your terms picked up upon, and we accept as an invitation, in a sense, to interact with you in this way now, to reflect to you some of the ways these ideas you are exploring have worked for us, so that if you wish to, you can adapt and adopt some of the ideas we have used into your own reality if you find they work for you. The reason we are doing this is because we love you unconditionally and experience a great deal of joy at seeing your own creative expressiveness come to the fullest possible blossoming that it can. And we, again, always receive benefit out of these interactions because by interacting with you, we get to experience more ways that the infinite has of creating itself to be, and this expands our understanding of creation as well, which allows us to know there is always more and more and more to explore. We would enjoy exploring these ideas with you as equals. But do understand, we are in many ways beings like yourselves. We do not know everything. We know everything we need to know to be who we are. You know everything you need to know to be who you are being at any given moment. And individually and together we can discover more. But do understand that the fundamental, as you say, purpose to these interactions is to remind you, each and every one of you, that you have the power to function as a reflection of the infinite and to know beyond a shadow of a doubt that all the answers you seek are attainable through the gate and the doorway that is your own individual consciousness. Is all of this making sense in your language so far? Is it translating adequately? The idea, therefore, is to perhaps keep in mind within all of these interactions that from time to time there may be concepts in our society that do not, let us say, translate in your language adequately. There may be concepts in your society that do not translate into our society in exactly the same way. And therefore, let us, in your terminology, be aware of semantic differences in all of the things we will discuss. Very often, it has been our experience that where there seems to be, in any discussion, a great deal of difference, there really is no difference at all in the fundamental point of view, but only a difference in the way you go about defining it. And if we can trust that we basically, all of us, are coming from the same source of infinite creation, then on some level you all have to know, and we all have to know, that ultimately we are all saying the same thing. So the idea now will be to engage in expansion of awareness and exploration together. And we extend to you our deepest appreciation at allowing us to experience the gift of your consciousness. And in return for this gift, I will ask you now, how may I serve you?
You mentioned infinite creation.
Yes.
I would like to know, created by what, and what do you refer to as infinite creation?
Infinite creation perhaps may translate more colloquially into your language as what you typify by the word God. We use the phrase, all that is, and mean it literally in that way. Our view of what you would call the infinite creator, the one prime source of all creation, is to us simply everything that exists. In other words, all that is literally all that is, made up of all that you experience in any dimension of reality. Now, it, to our perception, is aware of itself as a singular identity, but it is also aware of itself as a collection of all the diversity within creation as well. It sees itself through the polarity of being one and being many. So to us, when we refer to the idea of infinite creation, we are basically making a reference to something similar to the concepts in your planet that you would call God, although perhaps our definitions may differ a little bit.
I understand.
Does that answer the question sufficiently?
Yes.
Well, thank you very much. Sharing.
Is there an afterlife, and if so, what is it like?
Oh, it's very active, thank you. The idea, first of all, of what you call afterlife is not afterlife at all. It is simply a continuation of life, but we know what you mean by the terminology. The idea simply is that you have created there to be a multiplicity of levels of non-physical experience as well as a multiplicity of levels of physical experience as well. Now, the idea is that when you, let us say, translate from a physical to a non-physical consciousness modality, you are then, in a sense, a thought form in a world of thought form energy. The one main difference at first that will generally be noticed by many of you is that there will be no longer any time lag between what you think and what you experience as seemingly real, because you are now one-to-one a thought form in thought form energy. The idea, the definition of what you call physical reality, contains the notions of space and time in linear fashions and makes it seem as if there is a time lag between the thoughts you have and the reality you experience. Do understand that all of this idea that we are explaining now is founded on the principle that each and every individual is actually responsible for the creation of their own experiential reality. Thus, you are creating your reality physically, but there is a gap between your imagining of it and your bringing it into physical manifestation in physical terms. In non-physical terms, there is no waiting. The second you conceive of it, that's what you see. So, you can put it this way. Usually, the first thing an individual will experience, having been translated, or what you would call dying, from physical to non-physical reality, will be an atmosphere, an environment, a scenario that is most representative of the strongest belief systems they had just before they died. In other words, what they were most likely thinking they would see when they died is probably the first thing they will see, because you are the projectors of reality in that sense. Now, As soon as an individual begins to, as you say, get a handle on the idea that their thoughts change and all of a sudden the scenarios around them start changing, they'll begin to recognize that all scenarios, all atmospheres, all projections are representative of the afterlife. And it can be basically almost anything you want it to be. Now, there are levels of energy in the afterlife, each one being less and less and less physicalized in its terminology, more, as you would say, rarefied in its concepts. And so less and less likely it becomes, as you, let us say, graduate up the scale, that you will project your reality in any physically symbolized terms, but you will still experience it as being a real, solid reality. Do understand this, if we may, let us say, inject this into the conversation for a moment. In our dialogues with many of you, we have perceived that the majority, or at least a wide group of your society, has a particular notion about the idea of being able to communicate with individuals who have died. It is altogether possible. However, many of you have created the assumption that when an individual dies, they have nothing better to do than hang around waiting for you to contact them. They are very busy. They must acclimate to their new surroundings. They have assistants, what you would call guides, that are, in that sense, acclimating them to their new surroundings, filling them in, as you say, on exactly what you can do and how you can do it. They still have lives to live. They still have interests and ideas they wish to pursue. It is simply now they are pursuing them in different ways. So it is not really an afterlife, but an expansion of life, a continuation of life. It is simply a different level, a different expression, a different perspective of life. And in all reality, it is really no different than you, in physical terms, going from one room in a building to another room in a building that may simply have more windows in it and allow you to see a little bit farther. Now, is this a sufficient description, or is there something specific you wish to discuss? Well, thank you very much. Sharing.
I wanted to ask, why is it that we as humans tend to make things so much more complicated and more painful than need be?
A question we have been asking for quite some time. The idea you simply see is that many thousands of your years ago, your human culture began a cycle of limitation that brought with it something that you would call an unexpected effect. This unexpected effect was the ability, once you had locked yourselves into materiality from a certain point of view, an ability to forget that you did it to begin with and that you could extract yourself from it anytime you chose. It is under the category of what in your language you call a catch-22. The idea simply is that a certain degree of experience of limitation, a certain focus of limitation, automatically brings with it an ability to forget that you created it to begin with. So, once you had locked yourself into that cycle of limitation and focus as a physical being, you then had to play out the natural result of the momentum you generated many thousands of years ago. Now you are at the ending of that cycle, and that's why many of you are now remembering that there is more to your consciousness en masse than you previously thought. Oh, here and there, individuals in your society were able to, let us say, break out of the cycle. But now, en masse, you are finding an explosion of examinations, of exploration, of consciousness. That is why we are even able to have this conversation this day of your time, because you're at the end of the old cycle of forgetting and the beginning of the new cycle of remembering exactly who and what you are, aspects of the infinite, and that you created the cycle of limitation to begin with, and that it was always under your control to break free of it. But you had forgotten that that was so. So in placing yourself within the idea of limitation, you created, let us say, an entire mythology of now how reality should be manifest. It now became obvious that things had to be done in what you would call complicated manners, requiring many detailed steps for the accomplishment of anything. And because, in a sense, you had lost your sights of exactly how easy it was to create your reality, you began to create all sorts of methodologies by what you would call trial and error that seemed to be able to bring you somewhere close back to the surface, but which required many various ritualistic steps in that sense, so that you would constantly be able to monitor yourself, your progress, your procedure as you went, so that you would not, in your terminology, accidentally slip back into the forgetting state. And so now, at the end of the cycle, you have come up with many different systems of approach, each of which carries its own degree of complexity. What you are now, therefore, discovering is that one of the greatest difficulties your society has in what you call your new age of awareness is in really believing that something can be worthwhile if it's simple. The idea is very simple. The creation of your reality is very simple. You are, as you say, made in the image of God. Now, what does this mean? If God, all that is a multidimensional creator, then you must be too, because you are made in the image of God. That's what it means, at least to us, that's what it means. Every being within creation is literally an aspect of the infinite, and is always completely responsible for the creation of its immediate experiential reality, because you are a co-creator with the creator. So now you are remembering that, and now you are, let us say, weaning yourselves of the rituals, of the complexities. You are working your way through at whatever pace is comfortable for each of you individually and collectively, to a point where you can realize that things can be very simple, very easy, and that you do not have to endure struggling and suffering in order to discover that you deserve to not struggle and suffer anymore. Understand? Is this a sufficient description of the idea?
Yeah.
Oh, thank you very much. Shooting.
Is this channel of communication that is now established a recent thing, or has there been attempts in the past, for example, through our so-called prophets?
Oh, yes, thousands upon thousands upon thousands of your years of counting. Understand, there was very blatant interaction with many levels of consciousness in what you call some of the past cultures upon your planet. It is simply that the idea of forgetting that is actually the most recent thing that has happened in your history. The idea of breaking the link consciously is the most recent thing. So the idea of the communications that are going on now actually preceded the break and are now taking up once again on a widespread basis. Now and then, through the cycle of forgetfulness, there were many attempts to reestablish communications. But because of the depth to which your society had taken its forgetfulness, much of this proved to be, in your terms, difficult. But now these communications are being reestablished because your own consciousness is reawakening to the possibility that there are other levels. You are remembering, in that sense, that you are more than what you simply appear to be as a physical being. And so you are stretching out, reaching out once again for those levels of consciousness, both within yourself and within other dimensions of experience. And as you do so, that to us is the invitation that you are ready to re-engage in dialogue once again, which makes us very happy. Does that answer the question sufficiently?
Well, I'd like to add
All right.
a little bit more to that.
All right.
And ask you if you have any idea of what has stimulated this new awareness on our part to make this communication with you.
You have played out the cycle of negativity. There is almost nothing left for you to experience in that cycle. You have arrived at the end of it. Now, let me share with you a little, as you say, nickname that many of us have for your planet. In no way, shape, or form is this name meant to be derogatory. Honest. But the idea is that we have called you the masters of limitation. And what this basically means is that in our experiences with other civilizations, oh, there are many civilizations going through their own transformations, by no means are you, in your terminology, let us say, at the bottom of your totem pole at all. However, you are, as far as our experience tells us, one of the most highly focused and accelerated civilizations we have ever encountered. Which means you have experienced a greater degree of limitation in a more rapid way than almost any other civilization we have come across. You have, in other words, done it all. There's almost no other way you could explore the idea of the limitations you began several thousands of years ago. You have played it all very quickly, all the way out. You have basically satisfied yourself. You have now, in a sense, expended the cycle. And now that is why, simply because there almost are no other limitations to perform, that you are now waking up out of that dream into another one, because there is simply nothing else left to do. It had to be, as we were observing your society for thousands of years, that we knew we would have to wait until you had played the idea out. And now you have played it out. This life is the life that is representative of the transformational age. Has been going on now in an accelerated fashion on your planet for approximately 40 to 50 of your years, will continue in an accelerated fashion for approximately 40 to 50 years more. You are, as you say, smack in the middle of the transformational age, the halfway point. But it will be a very accelerated state, because the sooner you open up into positive ideas, you begin to accelerate geometrically. It will not take very long for your world to transform into a unified state, because the idea in and of itself of the exploration of limitation means things are broken down in complex ways. Things create a lot of complexity and detail, and you have to experience things a step at a time, one after the other. But now that you begin to unify things back together and awaken into your integrity, your integral state, things can speed up and can be very accelerated. You can experience a complete transformation within what you call no longer than the 100-year span we have already described, and that acceleration in a positive direction will take you to a place of establishing a unification, whereas it required tens of thousands of years to explore all the ramifications of the idea of limitation and negativity. So simply you are at the end of the cycle. That is why it is happening now. Does that make sense to you?
Yes, can I ask one more thing?
Absolutely, you do not have to ask if you can ask.
With this acceleration and awareness, will it possibly mean that more of us or all of us will be able to communicate with you?
Yes. But the idea first is that your own planet, shall I say, is more important. The sooner you begin to establish equal communications with each other and begin to function as one world, then it will be a very simple thing for you as one world to establish very blatant communications with other whole worlds. But the first step is to equalize this communication between yourselves. Then anything is possible. Everything is possible. And in fact, a lot of things become highly probable. Does that satisfy?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much. Shooting.
You said something about God before, and I'm curious if you and your people are familiar with Christianity. And,
To some degree.
And what do you think about the idea that Jesus Christ is a savior?
We perceive that the idea has been to some degree misunderstood. In the usual vernacular of your word savior, this is not in our perception what the individual you call the Christ actually meant to call himself. The idea simply, from our point of view, if we may begin at what you call the beginning, is that what you call the Christ consciousness is the collective, the combined consciousness, the positive side, the combined consciousness of your entire civilization. Once again, aware of itself as a singular consciousness, but also aware of itself as the combination of all of your collective consciousnesses. The idea of the manifestation in physical terms of what you call the Christ actually happened far more often than once. And the idea simply is that in every endeavor, in every projection of the Christ as a physical expression, the idea that was being shared with your population was that you are also all part of the Christ. Not that in that sense, the idea of the Christ is your savior in the sense that you have no power to create the reality you desire, and that only it does, but simply that your power to create that reality is a part of what it is. The idea simply is that at the time that the information was delivered in your society, the concepts that were understood by your civilization then could only translate the idea in terms of being a ruler and being ruled. And so you created the idea that the Christ was a savior in that sense that would do everything for you, rather than understanding that all the Christ is a reflection a reflection to each and every one of you that you are aspects of the Christ and have an absolute right to create the elevation and ascension of your own energy as a representation of that energy. Now, each and every world, each and every civilization has its own version of what you call the Christ consciousness. In our ancient remnant language, which we no longer use, the combined consciousness of our entire world was called Shekinah. Our Shekinah, your Christ consciousness and the combined consciousness of all other worlds together will form what you call the infinite creation. So in a sense you could say the Christ consciousness is a, shall I say, miniature version of all that is. And in that sense, that's why your society has translated it out to Son of God. Because it is in a sense a miniature version of the infinite.
Do you think that's why maybe we are so limited? Because we put everything in, or Christianity puts trust in Jesus Christ and not in themselves?
The idea simply is that anytime you take the power that you are and remove it from yourself, you place a limitation that actually denies your very existence, what you have been created to be. So yes, in that sense, the definitions are what is responsible for creating the limitations. Now the idea to some degree of what has been described as many of the attributes and experiences are all valid. It is all valid. Any tool in that sense is a valid tool if it gets you where you want to go. But the idea is that your society, as we perceive it, and again, not meant derogatorily, has placed many labels, many definitions, which in and of themselves are really the only thing responsible for limiting your ability to see that you are all the Christ. And that is what it is all about. By the way, one of the manifestations, the physical manifestations of the direct Christ consciousness that many of you have not recognized is what you call also your being called Mary, your mother of Jesus, as the female polarity of the Christ. There is always male and female in the collective Christ consciousness. And from our perspective, what this basically means, in relating it to what you now call your new age or your transformational age, is that the so-called second coming is not any longer the manifestation of the Christ consciousness in a single embodiment. It is the awakening of the Christ consciousness in all of you, so that you are literally creating heaven on earth. That is our perception of the so-called second coming. Is this making sense in your language?
Yes.
Does that answer the question sufficiently for you?
Yes.
Well, thank you very much. Shutting.
Okay, what do you think of consciousness-expanding drugs that we discovered in our exploration years?
Again, the idea is that all tools are valid. However, recognize that we have observed in your society that one of the, shall I say, choices, you would call it tendencies, but I will call it choices, that your society makes, is that because they have not been taught that they are already in touch with their aspect of the infinite and that the power is from within them, and they don't believe they are in control of their lives, they will continue to put the idea of the power into the external tools that they discover, assuming that the tool has the power to alter the state of consciousness in the way they want to alter it. It is all well and good to use it as a trigger, in that sense, as a catalyst, to show you what realms, what dimensions you can expand into. But do understand, once you have been shown, you don't need the tool anymore. You can do it yourself anytime you want to. The idea of what you call addiction is simply the continuation of the assumption that the power is still in the tool, in the drug, and that you don't have the power, that the drug has the power, and that you need the drug in order to create the effect. Once the drug has shown you the effect, you can create it at any time because you created it to begin with, because the drug is only a projection of your consciousness anyway. Is this making some sense?
Yes.
So the idea, fundamentally, is that all tools are basically valid if you understand that you are approaching the idea with your best sense of integrity and that you are honestly exploring for what you believe to be a beneficial idea in that sense. Then recognize that almost anything can be used in that way. and will allow you to key into, to lock into ideas that will help you expand your consciousness. However, always be mindful of the fine line between believing you need it and understanding that it is simply showing you a door that you can now open anytime you wish if you simply change the definitions of where the power lies. Understand?
Yes.
Does this assist you?
Yes.
Oh, thank you very much. Sherry.
You spoke of our collective subconscious or our collective consciousness.
Yes.
We have certain symbols as humans that are very universal in our dreams and in our
Yes.
meditation. For instance, a snake shows up as a powerful symbol for humans the world over.
Yes, although there will be some slightly different meanings from culture to culture, but yes, it is what you call a foundational archetypal symbol.
Do we have those? Do we have any universal archetypes, for instance, from our collective subconscious into your collective subconscious and back and forth?
Well, thank you very much. The idea, first of all, beginning with light itself, will be universal to all in some form, because light is what everything is made of. It is the creational fabric, as it were. So manifestations, ideas that are symbols of light itself, what you may call the stars, your sun being such a one, or any manifestation of light itself in that sense, will more or less be universal. Even in civilizations that do not perceive with the same sensory organs of sight that you do, they will still manifest the idea of light in some format, because they will perceive it as the vibration of the fundamental idea of the fabric of existence itself. That will translate everywhere. Symbols, however, in your terms, are tricky things, and again, will usually be relevant to a particular culture. We may have similar ideas, similar concepts, but for you, you may use one symbol, and for us, we may use another. The idea, to some degree, is that geometric shapes will be somewhat universal. Now, the idea of the circle, in and of itself, is actually the foundational geometric shape behind what you call the snake. Understand?
Yes.
The serpent, as you have said, Ouroboros, that which consumes its tail, that which represents the cycle of infinity, and in fact, in your society, the serpent, the idea of the snake, is actually a very ancient symbol tied in with what you call the dragon symbol, and it stands for ancient knowledge or ancient wisdom. One polarity of it for benefit, and one polarity of it, knowledge misused in a negative way. And also, by the way, that dragon symbol, the serpent symbol, the snake symbol, actually ties directly in to many connections that all of you have that actually are extraterrestrial in origin. In other words, none of you are original to your planet. None of you. And the snake symbolizes one particular influx of energy at a particular point in your history of reincarnations that were representative of an influx from other stellar systems. The symbol typified the idea of the energy at that time. A great deal of it at that time was actually experienced as negative and had a lot to do with some of the complexities that were formed in your society at that time. Is this making some sense to you?
Yes. Could you speak more on us not being original to the planet or whatever?
Well, yes, we can, but we will not do so too much.
Okay.
Because the idea is that it is our strongest desire that you focus on the idea that obviously you chose to be born on your planet for a reason, and we wish your focus to remain in the service that you can provide on that planet. It is quite valid to understand the idea of your lineage in that sense and your extraterrestrial connection, but do understand, from my point of view, you are an alien to me. So the idea is that what you are is valid where you are, and everything you need to live the life to the fullest that you need to live is right with you now. Anything you need from anywhere else will crop up in whatever manner you need it that will serve you and help you be who you are right now. Our best suggestion is, in your meditative states, go exploring with your imagination and see what feelings come up within you that are strongest in terms of an association or a connection to what you might call an extraterrestrial idea. But do understand, we have heard talk in what you call your metaphysical age of people being from this star system and originating in that star system. You all come from everywhere and nowhere. And the idea, when a reference is made of someone having an origin in a particular star system, simply means that that particular connection is for some reason, due to the definition of what this life is, standing out more abruptly than almost any other connection. In another life, you could be perceived to have a completely different connection to a completely different star system, if any connection at all. So, go exploring with your imagination, but always remember, of paramount importance is to apply the idea to what you are doing on your planet now. Because even though you have connections to everywhere else, right now you are focused as a native of your world, and therefore that must be the most important focus. Otherwise you'd be someone else. Understand?
Understand.
Does this assist you?
Yes.
Well, thank you very much. Sherry.
If we're responsible for our own reality, and our reality is some kind of pain, does it end with death, and does your society experience death as we do?
Not similarly. We do, as you say, translate from physiological to non-physiological formats, but we do it, as you would say, with our eyes open, consciously, and simply translate our physical form back into energy and continue on in a more expanded way. No, the idea of the generation of pain in no way, shape, or form means it must culminate in what you call physical death. It can always be transformed, especially now in your transformation life, where you are beginning to be aware of the fact that pain does not have to remain. So the idea is that in our civilization, we no longer experience the idea of pain. Now, the ideas of pain, all pain, mental pain, spiritual pain, emotional pain, physical pain, all forms of what you call pain are, from our perspective, the result of resistance of your natural self. Pain is friction, to put it on a simple terminology. Resisting the natural flow of yourself as an aspect of the infinite. And usually this resistance occurs when, having been brought up in the society you have been brought up in, you have been fed and bought into definitions of limitation. So that in trying to live out these definitions that are not necessarily representative of who you really are, you are going against your grain, so to speak. And going against the grain gives you splinters. So the idea of going against the grain will stab at you and create the idea of pain. In fact, pain is one of the ways that can function as a barometer to let you know when you are attempting to swim upstream. It can be used in a positive manner in that way. The idea goes hand in hand with the concept that we have discussed with your... And going against the grain gives you splinters. So the idea of going against the grain will stab at you and create the idea of pain. In fact, pain is one of the ways that can function as a barometer to let you know when you are attempting to swim upstream. It can be used in a positive manner in that way. The idea goes hand in hand with the concept that we have discussed with your society many times as follows. Excitement, excitement, excitement. What is excitement? Do any of you really have a definition of what excitement actually is, mechanically speaking? The idea as we perceive it is as follows, if we may share our point of view. Excitement, what you call the physical sensation or the knowledge, the knowingness of yourself, that is translated as excitement, is your physical translation of the vibratory energy that represents the path you chose to be at that moment of your life. So when something excites you more than anything else, that excitement is there to tell you three things. First, this is who and what you are. The circumstance and the situation that comes into your life at any given moment that excites you more than any other is letting you know this is who you are. Act on it. You see, excitement is the sign that many of you ask for. What can I do in life? Why am I here? What is my purpose? What is my mission? Give me a sign. Hey, look over here. Here's a very exciting thing you could be doing. Don't bother me now. I'm looking for my purpose. I'm too busy searching for my mission in order to have a good time. Hey, look over here. What about this exciting thing? Not now. I am looking for my mission in life. But you see, the things that come with excitement are the answers, are the signals, are the signposts. That's what excitement is. It's tapping you squarely on the shoulder saying, this is what you want to be doing right now. The reason it excites you is because it is aligned with the idea of who you are. That's what excitement is. The second thing it tells you is because it is who you are, it will be the thing, if you act on it with trust and conviction, it will be the thing that can be the most effortless thing you will ever do. Because it is who you are. You are really being yourself. And so, of course, it will be effortless. The only time you have struggle is when you're trying to be someone you're not. Again, fighting the flow. Buying into the definitions of what other individuals say you ought to be. The third thing it tells you when a situation comes along that is more exciting than any other is, this is the thing that if you do it, will support you in the most abundant way to allow you to keep doing it in a more expanded, ever spiraling, expanding way. 1, excitement tells you it is you. 2, it tells you that because it is you, it will be an effortless creation. 3, it tells you that because it is you and will be an effortless creation, you will be able to attract the abundance you need in whatever form you need. And understand, abundance is just more than money. What you call in your planet money is one of the valid ways to represent abundance, but it is not the only way. There are many ways. So let us add one more definition. Abundance. The ability to do what you need to do when you need to do it. Period. That's all abundance is. 2 individuals, one in your terms with more money, one in your terms with less money. If they are both capable of doing what they need to do when they need to do it, they are equally abundant. Because that's all that matters to them. And that's the level they have defined themselves to be. If someone has a more expanded idea of what it is that excites them, then perhaps they need more symbols of abundance to flow into their life to represent what it is they are. If someone simply has an idea that is sufficient to the symbols of abundance that are already in his or her life, then they will still be able to accomplish it as smoothly, as effortlessly, and easily as anyone else. So the idea, fundamentally, is that anytime you feel pain, you are basically ignoring, either because you have been taught to ignore, or because you do not believe that you can deserve the ease of creation, but you are basically ignoring the thing that really excites you the most. And when we say the thing that excites you the most, we do not mean you have to have, at this particular moment, an idea of the thing that will be the most exciting thing you will ever do in your life. No. Take it a step at a time. At any given moment, whatever it is at that moment, if you honestly assess all the things you are capable of doing, whatever it is at that moment that is the most exciting thing you could be doing, that you have the capability of doing something about, do it. It will align you with all of the flow of creation, and life will be effortless. This is actually what is meant in your society by the term surrendering. You aren't actually giving up your power, you're actually flowing in complete accord with your power. But because it seems effortless, and because your world is used to thinking in terms of things being under your control if they require an effort, then you don't think you're in control when there is no effort. And so you create this idea that you are giving your power up to a greater force. In a sense, yes, but not really. You're actually taking your power owning your responsibility when your life is effortless. That means you are going with the flow of who you have created yourself to be, specifically, and what you were created to be, generally, an aspect of the infinite. Is this making some sense to you?
A great deal.
So you can always transform pain by finding out within yourself, what is the definition I have bought into that would create the pain to begin with? What must I believe in order to have this pain reaction? When you get in touch with what the definition is, rewrite it. And then act like you believe the new definition is now more true than the old one. And as soon as you do, your life will be representative of the new definition, because your physical reality is always the product of what you hold to be the strongest truth, the strongest belief, the strongest definition. That's why there really isn't any the truth. There are a few fundamentals that could be called the basics of existence that are common for everyone, but there aren't very many of them. All the specifics are your creations, and the ones that seem similar from one person to another are similar only because you telepathically agree to create them to be similar, so you can all play the same game. But there is no real the truth in specific terms against which to measure other truths for their validity. The truth is composed of all truths, and all truths are actually real. Any definition you have at any given moment generates a self-perpetuating, self-sustaining, self-fulfilling automatic system of manifestation to support the definition and make it seem as if for that moment it is the only true thing. Because every reality is real. Every perception is a reality. Your imagination is the gate, the library to all probable realities. You cannot imagine non-existence. Whatever you imagine is on some level, somewhere, somehow, somewhen, real. And there are various ones that can be manifest in your particular dimension. Yes, there may be some that are not immediately applicable in your dimension, but they are nonetheless real. So the idea is to get a handle on what are the definitions that have created your experience. And if you find that there are definitions you prefer, maintain them. If you find there are definitions you don't prefer, change them. That's what you have free will for. Does this help you?
Yes, thank you.
Oh, thank you very much. Shutting.
Bashar?
Yes.
What is the purpose of knowing what your connection is to another planetary system? And you were saying before that it may change from lifetime to lifetime
Yes.
on Earth. And how is that a function? I don't understand.
Well, the idea, first of all, is to remember that, again, all of you exist on every level there is to exist upon right now. Different lives, what you call reincarnation, is simply your term in linear time references. But the idea of linear time is your perception from within a physical reality. All the lives, all the existences, all the ways you do exist, all exist now. And in a sense, on one meaning of the term, they all exist here as well. The analogy we have used a few times is what you call your radio analogy. You have in your society the analogy, the device you call a radio. Now you know that when your dial is tuned to one particular program, you know that all the other programs are still there at the same time. But you only get the one you're listening to, you're focused on at any given moment. Let's call that this life now. Here's your dial now, tuned into the program of what you call your Earth existence. But for each and every one of those other existences, their dial on the setting they have it on seems to be the only life that is going on. And all the other ones are immaterial or ghost-like or probable or potential lives or past or future or alternate lives. Each life sees itself as the life being lived. But all these things are going on simultaneously because all of existence exists now. And all the separations in existence are simply different frequencies that existence has of experiencing itself now. And it experiences all these different ideas all at once. However, because the definition of your particular program involves linear time, then you don't experience it all at once. You experience it stretched out. Before, now, after, beginning, middle, end, cause, effect, negative, positive. All these ideas are simply the result of the definition you collectively have created your physical reality to be. So, the importance of any of these connections simply is that there will always be bleed-through, shall we say, from all of your alternate lives into this one and vice versa. And that bleed-through will usually come in a way that is symbolized or formalized in a way you can apply it into this life. Otherwise, it wouldn't make too much sense for you. So, being aware of some of the other connections can assist you. All we do is de-stress the idea that it is crucial to know all those other connections, because every life is a complete kit and has all it needs to live the life being lived. If it excites you to explore these connections, it can awaken certain insights within you about perhaps the reasons for why you chose to be born on Earth at this time. A lot of those other connections do tie in, especially now in your transformational age, to why you have chosen to have a life on Earth at this time, especially because a lot of the things you will be doing on Earth at this time will actually open you up to blatant interactions with many of us, wherein many of you will discover your own counterparts existing in our societies. Understand? Yes. That's why it has, to some degree, some relevance in your life now. But we always like to downplay it, because the power always starts and ends with you. Understand? Yes. So the idea simply, in terms of a different connection to any different life, will be that each life of its own different definition will then make different levels of connections that are relevant to the definition of that life. There may be several lives that may have what you would call the same connection, thereby creating what appears to be a continuity of connection through a period of time. But each life chooses to make that connection separately and distinctly. And any continuity you may perceive is only your illusion. Understand? Yes. Is this of assistance to you? Yes, it is. Well, thank you very much. Shining.
You said that you've observed our culture over thousands of years.
I was speaking collectively, not my society specifically, but many of the societies within the association of worlds have. Yes.
Living the life that you're living now, do you experience time in the same linear dimension that we experience it?
Somewhat, but not exactly. Our ability to communicate with you right now, in a sense, shows that we experience it somewhat differently. For colloquially speaking, we are actually of your future. And in a sense, therefore, you could say we are speaking backwards in time. But the idea is that we do perceive to some degree, because we still have a physicality, somewhat, some notions of time, but they are very pliable and malleable for us, because our society's transformation is now going completely from physicality to non-physicality. Understand?
Yes, so from your viewpoint, you can tell what the transformational age has accomplished.
To some degree, here and there. Not everything will be apparent to us, and each and every different time that we, as you say, tap into the flow, we may perceive very different things. But some general overall patterns and flows are observable to us because of our vantage point. Does this answer the question?
Yes.
Well, thank you very much. Shining.
How would you perceive the definition of love to be from your perception?
Oh, thank you, thank you, thank you.
And how can one best learn to love unconditionally? I'm guessing that you, in your society, you may have not loved unconditionally because you use the word unconditionally specifically.
Yes, in the past, we had many similar ideas to what your society is going through, not as highly focused, but there was a time of conditionality in the idea of our love, and now in that sense it is unconditional. The idea of unconditional love is simply that, once again, love is light. Light is love. Love is the prime chord the prime frequency of creation itself. In a sense, you can literally say, everything is made of love, of light. It is the same thing. It is the substantive, supportive medium of existence itself. It is the very fabric of God. That is what love is. That's why when you're aligned with it, you are pulsing in synchronous harmony with the prime fundamental oneness of existence. That's what that vibration is. Complete and utter unity, alignment, synchronicity, harmony. The idea simply is that to allow yourself more opportunity to experience love unconditionally, start allowing yourself to perceive the infinite trust, the infinite conviction that you have always used to create your reality, whether it has been positive or negative. Remember that when we talk about using trust, using unconditional love, and using conviction in its total form, we are not talking about things you have never done. We are not talking about things you have to learn to do. All of you have always expressed infinite trust, ultimate conviction in the creation of your reality. It's simply a matter of whether you trust more in the positive or the negative side. So the idea of having a completely positive life in manifestation is simply your choice to buy into the positive definitions or the negative definitions. It's up to you. Unconditional love can come when you understand that if you have the choice, the conscious choice to choose only the positive definitions and therefore only experience the positive manifestations, then what would in your reality be worthy of placing conditions upon it? What would you want to place conditions upon? What would you want to control in an externalized fashion? What would you not trust as being a part of the unfoldment of your life? The idea goes hand in hand, linked with the idea of ultimate trust in a positive sense. If you know that everything that's happening in your life is serving a positive reason and that you will learn from it in a positive way, then why not be unconditional about it? Why place conditions on it? The only reason anyone would place a condition on something is if you didn't trust that it belonged in your life. But there are no extraneous creations, and there really are no interruptions. If something is happening in your life, then it's happening for a reason, even if only to show you that it's something that you don't want to have happen again. Even if only to show you that you may have beliefs that spawned it to begin with, and you may not want to perpetuate those beliefs any further. That can be used in a positive way. Your reality can be saying, look, here's the pain, here's the result of what you have been taught. Do you like it? No? Yes? All right, you decide. And then we'll change. So be unconditional in that sense of knowing that you can learn from everything in a positive way. And if you do choose to know you are a positively oriented person, then even if another individual with negative intention seeks to interact with you, you, by being a positive filtration system, no matter what their action, will only experience a positive result of their action. So, you can afford to be unconditionally loving to even individuals who have chosen to operate outside of integrity. Because the only reason individuals choose to operate outside of integrity is because they have not been taught that they are in control of their lives, and they are scared to death. Because they do not feel that they are in control, they feel they are out of control. They feel themselves sinking. And what an individual does when they feel that is they try to take as many people with them as they can because they don't want to be alone. So the idea is that the more willing you are to express unconditional love to everyone, then the easier it is for you to shine as a living example of absolute positive light. That will at least give them the best opportunity, by seeing that living example reflected from you, to choose to match your vibration and become positive examples themselves. Not that they have to, because everyone has free will. But simply if you radiate at that frequency, then no matter what they choose, it will only leave you with a positive effect. If they choose to match your frequency, then there will be more positive energy within your surrounding. If they choose to not match your frequency, they will not be able to stand in its light, and they will go on their way. And you will still be left with a positive atmosphere. Understand?
I sure do. Thank you.
Oh, thank you very much. Remember this. as a prime fundamental. No situation, no circumstance has built-in meaning. All situations, all circumstance are fundamentally neutral, empty, blank, devoid of meaning, zero, or as you say, zip. The idea simply is that every circumstance that appears in physical terms is simply a surface image, an empty shell, a prop. You fill the prop with meaning based upon what you have been taught to believe the situation means in being brought up in your society. When your parents said, if you see this, it means that. Steer clear. Now, obviously, on a fundamental level, there are things that are generally beneficial in terms of buying into the idea of something that, if you do it, may shorten your lifespan. But the idea, in specific terms, is nowhere near as limiting as many of you think. The idea simply is to remember that it is a very physical and mechanical principle. You have a neutral situation. You have two choices of type of meaning to apply to that neutral situation, positive or negative. Whatever meaning you apply is the effect you will get out of the situation. If you apply a positive meaning, you'll get a positive effect. If you apply a negative meaning, you'll get a negative effect. It's simple physics, simple mechanics. That's all it is. It is simply that a lot of your definitions have been so strongly ingrained in many of you that you think the situation is coming with an automatic meaning because you apply the meaning so quickly on what you call an unconscious level that you don't even realize you're doing it. You don't even realize that the situation in and of itself doesn't have any meaning to begin with. An example, an analogy that we have used a few times is called the train station analogy. Let us say, with all the integrity you can muster, with all the openness and honesty, you know you are doing your absolute best to meet a train on time, to take that train to what you believe is a very important meaning that will change the course of your life. So off you go to your train station. You arrive on your platform, you look down the track, and there goes the train, bye-bye. You have missed your train. Now, negative choice, negative choice. Oh no! This is horrible, terrible, unthinkable. I have missed my train. I will now miss my meaning. My life is ruined. Well, now you have a couple of choices in negativity. You can keep it to yourself and be miserable, or you can share your misery with all sorts of other people, making their day just as miserable as you have created yours to be. So let us say you choose the latter, and you become very angry about the idea of having missed the train. This is wrong, this is bad, this is terrible. I am now going to go off and complain to the train station about their schedules. It's their fault, not mine, not mine. And so off you go, in an absolute furor, as you say. Let's back the scenario up. Now you arrive at the train station all over again. You arrive on the platform. There goes the train. Now, this is the neutral situation. You are on the platform. The train is moving down the track. You are not on it. That's it. The situation doesn't mean anything. You are standing on a platform. A train is moving down a track away from you. You're not on the train. That's it. Now let's say instead of putting a negative meaning into this neutral circumstance, you put a positive meaning into it. Ah, you say, I know I did all I could to catch that train, and yet I still missed it. Therefore, there must be a positive reason. I don't know what it is. My analytical mind may not be immediately capable of fathoming why, but I know there must be a positive reason. Why? Because I chose to know I am a positively oriented person. Therefore, everything that happens in my life must only have a positive result. How about that? Therefore, instead of getting angry and stomping off to go and complain. You stand there perhaps for a little while, you ponder, ponder, ponder. You know you're going to miss the first meeting, but perhaps you explore it with fascination and curiosity. Why would this have happened? I wonder, I wonder. Oh joy, an unexpected challenge to discover. Well, you ponder long enough so that the next train comes along. Oh my, where'd the time go? Next train is coming along, and you get on the next train. Well, I don't know why. Why should I get on the next train? I don't know. I've missed the meeting. Well, who knows? Well, maybe the meeting is starting late. I don't know. Well, I'll get on the train. And there in the train is a friend you haven't seen for perhaps 20 of your years. And all of a sudden it becomes clear this friend was on their way to see you, to actually help you in a better way than the person you were going to see. Too good to be true? Oh, that's just a coincidence. That doesn't happen in real life. Oh, yes, it does. All the time. All the time. When you let it. There is negative synchronicity and positive synchronicity. Which one you get depends on your orientation. When you put positive meaning in, all you get is one positive coincident after another. Notice I did not say accident. Coincident after another. When you are negatively oriented, you miss the train all the time and do not understand why, and keep perpetuating the idea of being out of sync with everything, because you reinforce the idea that you don't fit, that the things in your life don't fit, they don't belong. This can't be happening to me. It can't be representative of my life. I have nothing to do with this. I am not responsible for creating this. The power is out of my hands. Life is happening to me. I'm a victim. Woe is me. All these attitudes reinforce and continue to perpetuate the negative side of events. It's up to you. By the way, does this answer the question sufficiently?
Yes.
Thank you. Shouting.
I have a question.
Oh, all right.
We have a terrible disease in this country now, AIDS.
Yes.
Incurable.
Oh, not really.
Would you comment on helping someone to die and suicide?
Oh, all right. First of all, recognize that one of the primary reasons that the dis-ease exists to begin with, and all dis-ease exists to begin with, once again, is a refusal to blend the polarities. In this particular case, with the dis-ease you have called AIDS, it is directly connected to the idea of the refusal over a long period of time of your society to blend and balance the masculine and feminine principles within each and every being. It is a denial of self-intimacy in many ways, a denial of many different ideas that is now perpetuated, that has now forced your society to respond to this idea by dropping its barriers and, in your terms, being exposed, by having no immunity to the idea now of having to face the issues it needs to face. Individuals can be cured. There are a few ways, although your society may not be ready to hear them. One of them is electromagnetically. With a strong enough electromagnetic field, pulsed at 7 1/2 cycles per second, the vibration of your planet Earth, an individual cellular structure can become aligned to the natural vibration of your planet and be rendered back into its natural state of health, no matter what the disease. There are electrical means. There are even what you would call chemical means, although do understand that all of these physiological cures are only representative of a strong belief system that an individual can be cured. Because the belief system is always first, the belief system creates the disease, the belief system creates the cure. However, if an individual is choosing that idea, either from ignorance or knowledge or fear or joy, to create a disease and die, then there are many ways to assist an individual in allowing them to be comfortable and go again through the transformation with eyes open, as you say, standing tall. First of all, it perhaps would be of benefit to remind them that they are, in fact, not ending, but only changing scenarios, to allow them to begin to get in touch with the fact that A, they created what they are going through with their power to begin with, And they are infinite, they are eternal, and they will always exist, even if they only exist in another form than what they are used to. Perhaps, of course, this will all be dependent upon whether this individual chooses to buy into this or not, because if they don't, then there may not be much you can do to assist them. Obviously, only what they are willing to allow you to help them with will be of help to them. You follow me?
Yes, sir.
But the idea, simply, is that you can begin to paint a scenario of power and joy, of love, that all things in that sense physiological are transitory, that they are truly eternal beings, and get them to start feeling that expansiveness of their eternity. Because if you exist now, you always have and you always will. Existence does not become non-existence. This is also one of the mythologies of your planet. In a sense, and this may not be using your language correctly, but this may explain the principle nonetheless, non-existence is already full of all the things that will never exist. There's no room for anything that does exist to go into it. These are the polarities of creation: existence, non-existence, nothing, something. You have to have both nothing and something in order to have everything. If you had nothing and only nothing, something must exist. Something has to be created out of the nothingness in order to complete the concept of there being everything. So if you are already on the side of something, you never will go to the side of nothingness. So that which exists always has, always will. Even though it may change form. Even your own scientists know that energy cannot be created nor destroyed. It can only be transformed. So you can begin to ease the understanding of the individual, that they are eternal. Get them to feel that eternity. That's one way. Another way is to take them through a meditation we have called the, well, BLT. No, it does not stand for what you think it stands for. It stands for Blue Light Technique. And it goes something as follows. This can aid in the alignment and the ease of pain for any individual in your terms suffering from a disease, especially one that is going to translate them into non-physicality. Allow the individual in a calm and relaxed and meditative state to take 3 deep breaths, and with each and every breath, envision a red vibration of physicality. The second breath, a green vibration of mentality and naturehood. And the third breath, a blue energy of spirituality and electromagnetic light. Allow themselves to drift in their imagination and create in their visualization any place at all that would represent to them their place of perfect peace. Wherever or whenever that is, it doesn't matter. Whatever to them is the place of perfect rest, perfect peace. Let them revel in that for a moment, floating, lying on the grass, floating in the water, floating in space. It does not matter where or when. Just absorbing, enjoying the scenario of their place of perfect peace. Then, suggest to them in their meditation that while they retain an image of the place of perfect peace, they start to envision that their body, as it is lying there, feeling either the warmth or the coolness or whatever sensation they desire, becomes surrounded by a transparent crystalline bubble of blue electromagnetic light, extending approximately 1 to 3 feet above the head, 1 to 3 feet below the feet, so that their body is floating in the middle of a bubble of crystalline light. If they are lying on the ground, then instruct that the bubble should go through the ground under their body, so they are encapsulated 360 degrees in all directions. Allow them to feel the energy of that bubble, and then allow them to perceive slowly that the bubble is not empty, but is filled with blue liquid light, and that it is touching their body, and that they are slowly, with every breath, breathing that liquid light in, filling up their entire body, breathing it out. all impurities dissolving, breathing the refreshing new blue liquid light in to every cell, feeling every cell invigorated and vitalized, and breathing out all the specks of black impurity and watching them dissolve. And as they go through this filtration process, continue to do so until all they are breathing in or out is the clear blue liquid light. Then, begin to feel as if the blue liquid light is literally soaking into their cells, saturating through their pores until every single cell, every single molecule, every single atom, every single space is full of blue liquid light. And there is a vibration and an invigoration, an excitation, a buzzing of all the crackling energy. Then allow them to begin to see what they have for so long considered to be their body dissolving, fading, becoming one with the blue liquid, with the sphere, until they arrive at a point where the sphere is a homogeneous sphere with no one portion standing out more than any other portion, and the whole sphere is beating, beating, beating with every heartbeat as one, breathing, breathing, breathing with every breath as one. Let them feel that peace, that joy, that release for a moment. Then suggest that they perceive in the very center of the sphere a tiny, bright, white spark of light that is a reflection, a crystal seed. And it grows and grows and grows and grows, becoming once again a bodily form made out of crystalline light, white, shining crystalline light. One single crystal, transparent to the blue energy, clear and pure. And this is the reconstruction of their bodily form. And it is not the same body they had before. And it is a new body, a new thought projection of physical materiality. And they are a new creation. And allow them then to allow the bubble to expand and expand and expand and expand until it becomes the picture of their place of perfect peace. And allow them to open their eyes in their imagination as the new body and look around at the newly energized place of perfect peace, and allow them then with 3 deep breaths to lock that reality in, and then open their physical eyes and understand beyond a shadow of a doubt that whether or not they have decided to remain physical or not, they now have created for themselves an energy vibration, a crystalline body form that will either allow itself to be healed and remain physical, or will take them through the translation into non-physicality with a minimum, if any, of pain. That's one way. You can use this if you wish, and trust your imagination and your unconditional love to come up with any other methodology that you feel within your heart will serve them best. Because you are interested in doing this, then by definition, obviously, you also must be able to come up with ways that will serve them, or you would not be attracted to ask such a question. Hey!
I'd like to know, why is it so hard for, takes more energy for one to love as opposed to one that takes more energy to hate?
It doesn't.
Less energy to love, more energy to hate.
It doesn't. It only seems to because of the definitions you have been brought up to believe. Because you think that hating is easier than loving. That's the only thing that makes it seem as if it is easier to hate than to love. It's only the definition. There is nothing inherent. There is nothing intrinsic about the energy of loving and the energy of hate that makes one truly more difficult than another. But if you have been fed over and over and over and over and over and over again the idea that struggle is more natural then not struggling, why would you be surprised that it's easier to hate than it is to love? All it is a definition. That's all it is. When you transform that definition, when you say, well, now, wait a minute. It is my definition. It is my belief. Whether it comes from your experience or not doesn't make a difference. Your experiences are the products of your belief. And experiences only reinforce beliefs that created the experience to begin with. So when you get in touch with the idea that it is only your belief that makes it seem as if it is easier to hate than to love, you will say, well, is this what I prefer to believe? Yes or no? No. What do I prefer to believe? I prefer to believe it is easier to love. Do I really believe that? Yes, I do. As soon as you do, it will be easier to love. It is only your definition that makes it seem so much more difficult. That's all it is. And do understand this. Hate may be a polarized expression of love, but it actually isn't the true opposite of love. Guilt is the true opposite of love. Because love is absolute worthiness, and you know what guilt is all about. Non-deservability. Hate still implies that something is deserved somewhere. So it may be a polarized expression, but it's not the true opposite. Does this make some sense to you?
Yes.
Does that serve you?
Yes.
Well, thank you very much. Shooting.
Bashar, may I ask you about astral projection?
Yes.
Can you give me a definition of it? And
Yes.
is it like